Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
I'm Erica Lynn, and we all know the ocean is the most demanding environment on Earth, consistently testing the reliability and durability of our equipment. When you spend as much time fishing as I do, you know that reliable gear is essential for staying on the water. This is why I went with Abyss Battery to power my trolling motor, electronics, and outboard. The guys at Abyss Battery are rattling the saltwater industry by manufacturing performance marine batteries specifically designed for sonar, outboards, trolling motors, and electronic fishing reels. They're also Bluetooth compatible, so I found checking battery statuses right on your phone while you're out on the water is a huge game changer. To learn more about why Abyss batteries are used by the pros and factory installed by premier boat builders, visit abyssbattery.com.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, so I'm sitting here and I am talking to Thomas Elpel. And Thomas, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody listening?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the program here. And I live here in Pony, Montana, and my main occupation over the years has been writing. I've published 7 books, probably best known for Botany in a Day, the Patterns Method of Plant Identification, which has sold over 150,000 copies. And so, I got...
and I am one of those, so...
What's that?
And I am one of those, so...
One of those, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that support, believe me. So, foraging the Mountain West, participating in nature. It's a little everything covering, botany, wilderness survival skills, house building, green economics, consciousness, and so kind of books all over the gamut. Plus, my most recent book was 2020, about a 5-month journey that I took paddling a dugout canoe down the Missouri River from Three Forks, Montana to St. Louis, Missouri. So
that we will definitely have to talk about because that sounds super interesting. But before we get into that, let's kind of talk about where did you start out? I know your grandmother had quite an influence on you, but where did you start out and first kind of get into plants and the outdoors and all of those types of things?
Yes, definitely my grandmother was a huge influence, getting me started, particularly on the edible and medicinal plants. But also she had just an interest in the survival skills, homesteading, self-sufficiency, and that all kind of rubbed off on me. So when I was in high school, I fixed up an antique cook stove, wood-fired cook stove from the late 1800s. And actually still cook on that stove today. That is nice. The stove in the kitchen. And my grandmother had moved here to Pony when I was in high school. I ended up following her, buying land here, building a stone and log passive solar house. So that was... Been here for 33, going on 33 years now.
Are you in the same house still?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And so it just it started pretty young. The interest in the survival skills, kind of thinking in terms of the shelter, fire, water, food, really translated from wilderness skills to how do I survive in the modern world. And so So basically, I just didn't want to have a job, and I didn't want to have a mortgage, and ended up, living in a tent, building the house, and then not having the mortgage has kind of given me the freedom to pursue my different passions over the years.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, though, about getting started on the survival skills, I actually went, when I was 16, I did a 26-day walkabout with Boulder Outdoors Survival School in southern Utah. And that was my first real hands-on exposure to the survival skills. It's like I'd been reading books up to that point, but when I got out there, it made like the blanket packs, and we're doing flint and steel and bow drill and edible. I mean, I knew some edible plants then, but just a wide variety of skills that kind of gave me a good foundation to go on and build on from there.
So the herbal medicine and stuff like that, did your grandmother actually like utilize the different herbal medicines, or was it something she was just interested in?
She did, and at one point in her life, when she had a stressful period there, she had developed ulcers, and the doctors were telling her, "Well, you got to eat all mild foods that won't irritate it." And she had read Jethro Kloss's book Back to Eden about taking red pepper, cayenne pepper, and so she tried that. It healed her ulcers, and then she was pretty much hooked from that point out. And so very interested in the herbal medicine, and always, I mean, red pepper every day for the rest of her life.
Nice.
At that point. But yeah, she had an entire pantry that was dedicated to wild teas that we'd harvested and dried. And then the fact that she cooked on a wood cook stove, she had a pot of herbal tea on the stove every day. And so I kind of grew up with that influence. And yeah, so it's definitely my formative years there. And I'm still doing more or less the same thing.
Yeah, so that has definitely become one of my staples now. What I actually put into the teas um, changes kind of on a daily / weekly or monthly basis, but herbal teas and things I've foraged and dried throughout the entire year are definitely incorporated now. Was some type of viral something, and a little bit of seemed like almost an infection was starting and setting in a couple weeks ago. And I had my whole family, and we were drinking yarrow and plantain with some other stuff in it, and rosemary even, and sometimes a little bit of bee balm and things like that. And I think it actually really knocked it out. So changing that up, and a lot of times it's nettles and dandelion and mint or something like that. But there's herbal teas almost nightly in this house now. So it's
That's
become
fantastic.
a routine, and I feel better every night. And on the nights I skip it, I'm like, man, I didn't have my tea, So
Okay.
yeah,
Very good.
but is there anything that you kind of incorporate into your daily lifestyle as far as the teas go? Is there anything like that, or is it just kind of on a needed basis?
Oh, I have tea most days. Certainly never developed the consistency that my grandmother had. I mean, she never missed a day with the pot on the stove. For me, I get super busy, and I'll have a pot on the stove that I'm drinking out of for a few days, and then I might sit there, and then another day I'll open it up, and I got something moldy in there. So, then, so yeah, a real
Yeah,
erratic with that, but yeah, basically always something.
I think I'm going to start incorporating pine needles and pine bark as well
Mm,
into.
hmm.
I haven't done that yet, but I've got a friend that seems to do that quite a bit, and he even steeps it in a jar and just lets it sit in the jar, and takes a swig off of it up to
Hmm.
days later. But
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah, so that's definitely one thing. But I'm super curious about your home and the passive solar and things like that. Where did that come from? Where was the drive to learn about that, and what did you utilize? I mean, back then, and there might have not have been as much internet or at all, right? So, well, I mean, just books from the library, old resources. I mean, was it like a Mother Earth magazine that had some articles or what?
It was totally Mother Earth News Magazine. That kind of was the internet of alternative ideas back then.
Yeah.
And I had collected most of the Mother Earth News magazines and read them over and over again. And then I also had learned about like slipform stone masonry through Mother Earth News magazine that I then had purchased some books on that. And there wasn't a lot to go on at the time, but there was enough. And so I was actually drawing house plans in high school and kind of refining them over the years there. And then I basically had got married in the pony park here. We'd moved into the tent and built the house. And so our first summer was like doing stone masonry. Second year we did the upper story, the log work here, and put the roof on. So that second winter, basically, we moved into the house. We just didn't have any doors or windows or insulation at the time, so it was a little bit cold. But we had the stove installed, and you can sit on the oven door. So one of us could sit on the oven door to be warm. The other could stand behind the stove to be warm. And it sounds a little rough, but Montana winters are on the cold side. But I later realized that we saved like $150,000 in mortgage or interest rates on a mortgage by
Right.
building our own home. So that's pretty good. It's a pretty good wage for camping out.
Especially the way property values are climbing in Montana right now anyway.
So. It is astonishing here how things have spun out of control with that. But anyway, built. So it had a big greenhouse on the front. There was actually a concrete slab here when we bought the place, and so we did poured a concrete wall in the back. So it's earth bermed up to 10 feet deep on the back, 8 feet on the east side. The south side is encased in a big greenhouse, and the west side has two stone walls with insulation in between. And just having the shelter, just really learned to think in terms of those survival priorities: shelter, fire, water, food. And having the shelter just opened up so many possibilities that freed me up to pursue these different passions. And these book projects get to be huge. Each book project can be as big. Writing a book can be as big of a job as building a house, and so they take some time. And it's really the fact that I haven't needed a job that has enabled me to have the time. Since I didn't have expenses, gave me the free time to develop a successful writing career.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool to be able to pursue it like that. I mean, you hear people that say to pursue your passions or your dreams, and I mean, you really went for it. That's amazing. Especially the freedom that brings. As somebody who's tied, I feel like I'm tied to a job. Obviously, I could leave it and pursue things, but at the same time, I want to be semi-responsible and be able to provide for my children, and have to be a little more premeditated about running off and doing certain things. That's amazing to be able to do that, and to know, more than anything, to know what your passions were at such a young age and follow them and pursue them. I think a lot of people are super confused on what they want or truly value, and then of course those things change, and especially these days it seems like there's so many adult onset, as they call it, hunters, to where I'm 35, I'm burned out, I want to get into nature, what can I do? Oh, hey, I watched an episode of Meat Eater. Steve Rinella looks like a cool guy and he teaches me a lot. So now I'm going out and I'm going to do the same thing he does, and I'm not picking on him or anything like that, but it seems to be the trend. And then all these people are doing that. And, it just goes to show, if you follow your passions early on, or you have at least your head on a little bit right, you can have a pretty cool lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I run this program called Green University that it's essentially, well, I have a youth program called Outdoor Wilderness Living School, or OWLS, and then an adult program called Green University. And really, a big part of that is getting comfortable with sort of a minimalist lifestyle. And like, I've had students that have come that feel like they're out of high school. They kind of feel like they're going to get drawn into the meat grinder of society in terms of work and expenses and all that. And then they come here and they live simply and learn that well, you really don't need money to live from day to day. And it kind of just opens up. It's sort of a lifestyle that opens up so many different possibilities. And so, because one gal was here for a year-long program, and I think a little over a year. She's currently working for a wilderness therapy program in Utah. Just came up for a visit, and so she's actually has a real great income, and she's happy living out of her vehicle right now. So essentially, all that money's going in the bank, and she'll be able to put that towards her dreams rather than towards rent. And
Right.
so it's just a powerful thing to learn at that age, is to be able to kind of avoid some of the traps that mainstream society provides.
Yeah, I think it's so cool, the people that are doing the nomadic, the van life thing with just being like the butter. Really, it's just it's too hot, you're getting a little too soft, go somewhere a little bit cooler, or if it's way too cold, move somewhere else and just follow that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was me, I'd probably follow hunting seasons and foraging seasons. So,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
And I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends that just kind of make it a lifestyle and spend months every year either on backpacking trips, hiking hundreds of miles, or canoeing or whatever, and work a month or two a year and play the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So one of the things you mentioned was the stone wall with insulation in between the two stone walls on the south of your house. I want to address that. So that is like the western sun, the sun where it's longer throughout the day, puts the most solar heat onto the wall and warms it and keeps it warm or something. Is that kind of the principle behind that, or no?
No, that's the one side. Since there are two sides of the house, or earth berms that are protected from the weather there, the south side is protected by the greenhouse. So, I mean, the greenhouse, so we have just like this wall of glass that the greenhouse gets cool at night. It doesn't freeze in there, and I can actually, I don't have any backup heat in my house. I can leave in our Montana winters for a month or more at a time, and I don't have to worry about the plants freezing. I don't have to worry about the pipes freezing. However, the greenhouse does cool off, and particularly right now, it's supposed to be below zero tonight, so temperature will probably be this early in the season. I'm going to say 50-ish by morning. But it doesn't really get much colder than that anytime in the winter. And so it's kind of a buffer that we have the house, and then it's protected by the greenhouse. And then of course when the sun pops up and we get 70, 80 degrees in there, I just open the door upstairs and a window downstairs, turn on the fan to circulate that heat into the house. So the west side is just the side that wasn't like encased in dirt or glass. And so the insulated stone wall, the insulation is just stopping the transfer of the heat there. So that's all that's for. And the stone is, of course, cover up the insulation from inside and outside. I think there's not a lot of stone houses, and those that have been built usually have stone only on the outside, and then would have frame wall and sheetrock on the inside. But my house is mostly natural surfaces in it. There's not much drywall anywhere in the house except the ceilings.
Nice. No, that's cool. There's quite a few stone, well, at least there used to be. There's hardly any of them anymore, but when I was a kid, I remember a lot of them, especially along the river that I live very close to, and a lot of limestone homes that were stacked stone, and there's
Hmm.
still a few of them around, but most of them are gone, and there was like one or two of them that were still standing that were unoccupied for a long time, and I think one of them just got struck by lightning, but it was so cool to where they had it was pretty much just stacked stone and then interior walls built, and then big timbers for their roof. It was
Okay.
pretty neat looking at them and kind of, maybe walking through one or two of them, wandering respectfully, of course, wandering.
Mhm.
Um, but so I'm kind of curious. One of the things I know that you talk about was when you were a kid, roaming in Montana, walking all over the place, and then that's kind of slowly changed as far as trespass laws and things like that. Even though their trespass laws seem to be, after I read it, I looked into it a little bit on my own, um, and it seems to be kind of lax as long as there's no malintent or anything like that, or theft or anything, as far as that
Mhm.
goes. Can you kind of address that a little bit to how, it's changed from the time you were a kid and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Montana, really I just really I had no concept of private land because you could just walk anywhere, and so like fences were for livestock, not for people. That's basically the culture that existed here when I was a kid, and so you could walk to the horizon, just going over fences. Nobody cared. It was just the way of life here, and actually, when I was 20 years old, a girlfriend and I had walked across Montana, started at my grandmother's house here in Pony, walked east across the state to Fort Union on the North Dakota border. So it was a 500-mile walk, and a good portion of that was on private lands. That was actually the first time I'd seen no trespassing signs. It was one of Ted Turner's early ranches here, and yeah, it was like there's all these no trespassing signs on a gate. We're following an old railroad bed, but there are no more railroad tracks on it. And it was April. There's snow in the mountains. We didn't really have anywhere else to go, and never really seen these no trespassing signs before. And uh, just not having anywhere else to go, we went over the fence anyway and went through the property. And we did run into the land manager, and I wasn't real thrilled about it, but being Montana and all, he said, well, just, you know, move along. We camped there overnight. He said, just move along in the morning. And we did. And the next place was posted also, but they invited us in for hamburgers. And
Nice.
so that's kind of, kind of the way it was here. And it has definitely changed since then. And I actually, friends and I did a walkabout year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, yeah, a year and a half ago. We went out in the moonlight in the middle of a snowstorm on this walkabout, and one of the guys had lost his cell phone out there. Went back for the next day, and it turned into this whole trespassing debacle. I was eventually thrown out of court, but that was a mess for 8 months. 8 months of a mess, and it's so ridiculous too. So anyway, things have changed here, and
Yeah.
it's
Do you
really unfortunate.
do you feel that the culture, I mean, because one of the things that you see is it seems like people were more respectful than they are nowadays, and it just like one, a lot of the youth is unaware of everything around them. They're very self-absorbed and dependent upon technology, and just aren't aware of anything around them. And I feel like so many of them are disrespectful as far as the land, and they're not courteous or trying to be a steward of it. And I could see where it creates a problem, and a landowner would be upset. I live on a creek, and I don't mind it when younger kids go down there and play.
Hmm.
But when you get to where they're in their teens and stuff like that, they want to go down there, they want to party, they leave a mess behind and all that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that I don't like. I don't post it or anything like that, even though now I could, because
Hmm.
it turned out to be a landmark case, and the courts ruled in favor of the landowner, and it actually changed the water access rights here in Illinois.
Oh, really?
It did. And they redefined navigable waters now. So it used to be any body of water that was flowing was considered navigable and you were allowed to be on it. But now it changed to where if the owner owns on both sides of the water, it's no longer considered navigable unless a barge can go through it.
Wow.
So it completely changed it. And it turns out, I mean, I can't blame the landowner because I've heard the story from a friend who actually knows the farmer. And the farmer was pretty big into archaeology and actually would let the state come and do things. And there was other individuals that were coming there up onto his land and stealing artifacts and things like that. And it turned into a big dispute, in which case the first few times he dropped the issue, but it kept becoming a repeat offense, in which case it turned into that. So, and then it went all the way to the courts. I think there was some hunting, other things as well that kind of all came into play. It wasn't just the archaeological stuff, but it was it turned into, you know, high water marks and disturbing soil and being pretty disrespectful to the guy. So but
I think in terms of your question about the young people, the thing I noticed working with young people a lot is that they have grown up in cages already. So just wherever they've grown up, there's always boundaries, and they're kind of stuck on the roads. And so they don't have a connection with the land. They are bored just in the same way that zoo animals get bored and are psychologically unfit. And so one thing I notice is that when they come here, you know, we have hundreds of thousands of acres of public land. It doesn't necessarily occur to people that, oh, I can take myself out. That you're not necessarily going to go out for a hike in the mountains unless like I organize it and lead it, do something to initiate it, because it's just not part of the reality. And I've seen this like when I had a horse, you know, I'd like fence off pasture with electric fence and, you know, contain them there until I grazed everything down. And then I take the electric fence down and the horse is walking back and forth and takes a little bit, not ready to cross that line. It's so conditioned to the electric fence. And so I see that a lot with our young people that have just grown up where they've sort of grown up in cages, but they don't necessarily recognize when they're free, that they're free when there are no cages. And so just kind of that extreme disconnection. And yes, boredom, you can't really help but to have vandalism type problems when we're treating our young people like zoo animals and confining them to these spaces. It doesn't look confined because we say, oh, the fence says you can't go in there. But really, when people are treated as livestock, we're all on the, confined within these, it's like staying on the roads, then it's really the same thing. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. It's still we've turned into a nation of livestock. And really, if you look at the kind of the roots of the trespassing, it started in the South with the Jim Crow laws. That there used to be, you know, a big spirit of the right to roam, freedom to roam in the country, but with the Jim Crow laws, you know, trying to contain Black people in the South was to take away their any benefits to them, that, you know, so as to keep them from foraging in the woods, to keep them from taking shortcuts to town, keep them from gathering sticks for firewood or whatever. These laws started to be applied for the purpose of, you know, keeping them, holding them back, holding them down. And well, what has happened is that it has just spread out from there, so that now we're all affected by it. We've all lost those rights, and we've all turned into livestock, really.
Yeah, I find it super interesting. Like, is it Scotland? You can walk pretty much anywhere. There's no restrictions on that, but there is restrictions, I believe, on hunting or something like that. Like the people own the game and the live, like obviously their own livestock, but also the game.
I've actually written some articles about that. The freedom to roam laws in Europe, it varies a lot from country to country, but they're not necessarily old laws. The United Kingdom had they've gone through periods where people lost access and then where they restored access. So the Countryside Ways and Means Act of 2000 or 2002 or something like that. It was fairly recent that kind of set the pattern for the UK, and so they've got fairly liberal laws there for ensuring access, and people have actually found that vandalism has gone down. Like one farm I was reading about, it used to have the farm had a fire truck because they'd had problem with people coming in and lighting fires and that. But once and they thought it would get worse with the freedom to roam, but it actually went down to the fact that to the point that the fire trucks just kind of rotted into the ground. It wasn't operational anymore because they weren't using it. And but I've noticed like in Sweden, very generous laws for hiking, camping on private land, but where fishing and hunting is very different than how we have it here. So, for example, paddling the Klarälven River in Sweden, you go through different fishing. That's like the fishing rights are managed by different communities. So in an 80-mile river, went through like 3 different fishing districts where you'd have to get a separate permit for each one. So, each country has pros and cons to their system, and that part isn't great, but the access is wonderful.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then you mentioned that with the different fishing districts, and kind of reminds me of Alaska and the way that
On average, it takes about 30 days for a person to break their New Year's resolution. So if saving money was on your 2024 list, your odds aren't really looking that great. Luckily, I have a 100% guaranteed way to save you money this year. Just switch to Mint Mobile right now. Mint Mobile has wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for $15 a month. If you save as much as I think you're going to, you are going to be able to afford a brand new rod and reel. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get your new wireless plan for $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That's mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Isn't the point of traveling to get away from it all? To feel the best you've ever felt? Then maybe you should check out Aruba. You'll spend your time relaxing on cool, white, sandy beaches and floating in healing blue water. You'll meet locals brimming with gratitude for an island that redefines what a paradise can be. When your trip comes to an end, you won't need another vacation because you just had the vacation. That's the Aruba effect. Plan your trip at Aruba.com.
I'm trying to think of the word. The tribal different communities have the say in the rights to the final say in the wild game management. It's not just the state and the biologist, but the actual tribal communities, and then some of the just communities in general, because they're so isolated that they get to have the final decision. And some of them actually just changed it to where no locals can hunt the caribou population. I can't remember what herd it was. There was a specific herd. I mean, there's 3 or 4 major herds, but they chose the decision. So even if somebody lives in Alaska, but they live in Anchorage or somewhere, they cannot go there and hunt. It's only locals now. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic how that played out. But it just kind of reminds me of that when you mentioned the fishing districts. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and you mentioned it earlier, was your dugout canoe. I want to know so much about that, and then the trip itself. So let's start out with the canoe. What type of tree did you use? You felled it? Was the whole purpose to use all hand tools and do it the primitive way? What was that like?
All right. So, yeah, I'd had an intermittent dream to carve a dugout canoe. Been involved a little bit with the Lewis and Clark world, just as I'd founded the Jefferson River Canoe Trail, where we purchased properties for the public along the Jefferson River, which happens to be on the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. And that got me kind of moving into the direction of the Lewis and Clark history. And then through that, I met Churchill Clark, who's a direct descendant of William Clark of the Lewis and Clark expedition. And that's kind of what he does, is travel the country, as he says it, carving canoes and paddling trees or something like that. So, so I had invited him to come up to our Green University program to work together on a canoe. And I had a cottonwood that had fallen down on one of these canoe trail campsites. So brought him up there for it, and we got out there. This was 2018. We went out and we looked at the tree, and he said, "It's too small." And then after having arranged, months in advance to get him there, we kind of went into panic mode. And there's not a lot of big trees in this part of the country. Most of our trees are pretty darn small in diameter. And by the time you take off the bark and like the sapwood to get more to the heart of the tree, you have to start with a very big log. And so we ultimately found a Douglas fir at a sawmill that was I don't remember, it wasn't quite 36, maybe 33 inches in diameter. And we got that hauled to camp and started whittling on it. And it's not a normal dugout canoe wood. I mean, people use cottonwoods, ponderosa pines, things like that. I doubt anybody in the history has made a dugout canoe out of a Douglas fir, and for good reason. The wood is hard, is full of knots. It kind of snaps and cracks all the time you're working on it. But we worked with, frankly, any tool we could throw at it. So we did plenty with the hand tools, the adzes for chopping, but really used the chainsaw as much as possible. And I've got a tool called the Log Wizard. It's like a joiner blade, so you can essentially turn the chainsaw into a little planer. You can kind of scoop out real well with that. So, yeah, and it still took us. I mean, most of it happens very quickly, and then it just takes the closer you get to the end, the slower it goes. And we had a functional canoe. We started in April, I think. We did our first run on the river. We did the Marias River in June, a week-long run there, and then kind of went off to other things. But anyway, finished it up in the fall. So we had like 6 months messing around with the canoe in there. And yeah, and Churchill's kind of way of doing it is there's no real actual pre-test. You just kind of loaded up. We actually loaded all the gear in there on the trailer, on on the truck, and then we tested the canoe by shoving it off into the Marias River. And there wasn't a whole lot of water in there, and I thought it's just going to sit, this thing's going to sit on the bottom, but actually it floated beautifully. It did have like 3 little leaks where water was coming in, but it was sealed up very quickly, actually. And then the canoe performed fantastic. And so we got to do that 1 week on the Marias River in 2018. And then that fall, I started planning for the bigger trip. It's 2,300 miles down the Missouri from it's the headwaters. It's So Three Forks, Montana is just a half hour from my house, and that's where the Jefferson, the Madison, and the Gallatin come together to form the Missouri River. And then it's 2,300 miles down to St. Louis. And so, we left June 1st in 2019, and just really took our time because we were hiking, exploring. We'd take like every fourth day, we would take a rest day. So just trying to go at a very leisurely pace to explore the country in between, kind of as Lewis and Clark did, as opposed to just racing to get it over with. And so we paddled into St. Louis. I believe it was on November 8th. Yeah, it was starting to, that was I think the first day we had frost, actually. We had a couple other cold days, but that was our first day we actually had frost when we were paddling. And so it's like, okay, time to wrap it up,
So let's talk about, I'm curious though, like, so the gear that you mentioned gear and you put it all in there. And so what did you pack? What did you do for food along the way? Like, were you sleeping in a wall tent? What did you keep it like a traditional type tent? Was it just sleeping under the stars? What did you do?
Okay. Had mostly modern gear, so I just had like an REI tent for the journey, and actually I was quite impressed it survived the whole journey. That's a lot of use and a lot of weather on a tent, but it held up well. And so fairly conventional gear overall. The first week was probably our best week of foraging, actually, because it's an area we're familiar with, and we go bow hunting for carp there all the time. And so with the carp and the morel mushrooms and all the spring greens and everything, there are a lot of foraging right there. And never really saw another good place to go to hunt carp after that. We did, they were always greens. I mean, wherever you go, there's something you can add to a meal. And so we had that all the way down the river, and that was great. But otherwise, we'd restock in towns, and we had quite a bit. This was a fairly large canoe. We had quite a bit of room. Plus, the fact that the canoe was so heavy, it had its own custom trailer. And there's 15 dams that have been built on the Missouri River. So you have to portage around each of those. And this is not a canoe you're going to carry around a dam. So the trailer had its own journey because we didn't have a backup crew that was following us. We did have friends and family locally that could meet us at a dam and help us, get around it. And so the trailer got handed off between friends and family here in western Montana. But then as we went downstream, the trailer kind of took its own journey, was handed off to various river angels. Sometimes just people we met on the riverbank would volunteer to drive it down to the next dam. And so the trailer made its own journey all the way to St. Louis and was there when we got there, and rented a U-Haul to bring it back. But anyway, I had like jars of canned fruits and stuff that I brought in the canoe, and some in a resupply box that went with the trailer. So we ate pretty good. And one of the guys, they were I sort of opened it up to I put it out to the world, who wants to join me. I do this fairly regularly for different canoe trips, like anybody want to come join me to go paddle this river. This time it just happened to be a 5-month-long trip. And one of the guys, Josiah, hadn't really had any canoeing experience, but he bought a canoe for the journey, and we told him how to paddle it before we pushed off the bank. And anyway, he had brought, for the first part of the journey, he had brought like a bunch of quinoa and a bunch of cans of I think it was black beans or something, just the two items. And then when we got down to Fort Benton, Montana, he went to like Full Tilt, Lewis and Clark, and he spent like $300 on red meat and bought these coolers and ice. And then we're going down, and it's like at this point, it was a month. It's a month between towns there, from Fort Benton to Fort Peck. Eastern Montana is just super remote.
Yeah.
And so we're just like the five of us going along trying to eat as much red meat as we could, 3 meals a day before all this went bad. Anyway, we ate well, and as I said, we foraged for greens and got into berries. Started getting into the ripe choke cherries in eastern Montana. Got to eat some good wild grapes on south. Got into the pawpaws. I'd never seen or harvested those, but that was amazing. So I really just kind of loved that foraging component to it. And there was enough people following our journey online that people started coming out and meeting us and kind of whining and dining us. So we ended up having a lot of steak dinners on the way down too. So all kinds of foraging.
Nice. So what state did you end up in when you ended up finding the pawpaws?
That was, I believe that was Indian Cave State Park in Nebraska near the border with Kansas.
Really? Nice.
Yeah. And and the 2019 was the second highest water runoff river year ever recorded. And so a lot of the river was in flood stage on the way down, which was
kind of,
actually a lot of Yeah, it did. It helped with that. A lot of the marinas, a lot of the boat ramps were closed. So even at like Indian Cave, there was like a patch of ground that we parked on, and then we're like walking down the road, following the yellow dotted road, which happened to be under a foot of water, to go into the park, talk to a ranger, and kind of gave us directions where we could paddle to get to a campsite. But there was a lot of water that year. And anyway, when we got done with this whole thing, I came home and I spent I'd actually been writing a newspaper column from the river that was printed in a number of different newspapers across the country here. And so when I got home, I spent the next 4 months kind of pulling all that together and the photos, 700 photos into a book, 5 months on the Missouri River paddling a dugout canoe, that actually won the Writer's Digest First Place Award for Nonfiction for 2020.
Nice. I don't read much fiction. I don't have time for it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't need to escape when there's so much out there that you can escape to. I don't know. That's my whole theory anyway on it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people do need an escape, but to me, the world is out there. Go explore it.
Sure. I love fiction, but just don't have the time for it. Other things to do.
I like stories of people's like one man's wilderness or something like that, to where it's just something to where they go out, they find their passion or what they wanted to do and establish something, which I think is pretty cool. I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but he ended up building the log cabin up in Alaska. Gosh.
I don't remember. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but he documented it, and it was some of the first video footage of that era of people building the cabins and that kind of stuff with the whole in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, or 60s and 70s with the homestead claims out there. I'm trying to think of yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, Richard Prenke was the guy's name. That's it.
Okay.
So he did all kinds of video documentation. He kept journals that were so meticulous and accurate that the state actually used them for wildlife surveys and different things and utilized his journals. So pretty cool guy. But just stuff like that fascinates me. It's not like that to me is way cooler than something that somebody made up. I mean, I don't even know how people come up with these things that they come up with different fiction things, but
for sure.
But yeah, so your wood stove, what's fascinating is I've been watching a little bit of the Waltons lately. And they always cook on a wood stove. So I always thought to myself, man, I want a wood stove like that. So yours was from the 1800s, which is does it still have a warming drawer and stuff like that on it, or is it?
Yeah, there's a warming oven above it, little pan drawer under the oven, and it's probably, I'm going to say maybe 1895. Yeah, so it was a Majestic, and it was um, picked it up at a garage sale, and it had been like the bottom was completely rusted out. So it normally has like a 1 inch strap of metal that goes all the way around the base. But because of the rust, ended up removing that one and riveting on a 2.5 inch wide strip just to kind of cover up the jagged, rusted edge there. So I ended up rebuilding, some of the doors and quite a bit of restoration work on this. This was my senior year of high school, last half of my senior year. It was pretty easy. I had like I had 2 art classes, an independent study, teacher's assistant. I had 4 hours in the art room. I had a metals class too. So I just like finished all my schoolwork before graduation. And my art teacher actually found this stove at a garage sale, told me about it, and I brought it into the school and did the restoration work there in the art room, and then just needed to build a house around it.
Nice. That's awesome. So have you ever had another stove in that home since you've built it, or is that the stove for cooking?
No, I have a hot plate that I use in summer mostly, but and with the global warming, we get longer and longer time each year where we can't safely use or would want to use the cook stove in the kitchen. So just get out the hot plate and cook on that. But yeah, it just seems like it grows longer and longer. It used to be just a few days of summer where you wouldn't really want to cook on the wood stove, and now it'll sometimes be 2.5 months straight where either it's too hot, too dry, or just even too smoky from the wildfire smoke. You don't want to start a fire. So, but it's great when the cool weather comes back and fire up the wood stove. And it's actually the main source of my hot water too. I don't have an electric water heater. I don't have a gas water heater. I have a solar water heater in the yard. It is the primary hot water source in summer. The wood stove generates hot water, so it takes like maybe 20 minutes when the fire's going, but to have enough for a shower. Doesn't take long really. So I really have hot water almost all the time, and put in solar panels to generate electricity, turn the meter backwards. Put those in 2002, so that zeroed out my power bill. So yeah, no mortgage, no power bill. Always a deer laying on the side of the road, so free meat, picking up roadkill. Yeah, it's just been good. I mean, it's kind of foraging lifestyle, I guess. To me, I even like just driving home the other day. I stopped to throw some trash in the dumpster, and there's like all these little cutoffs, 2x4 cutoffs, and so I just boxed up those. Like, well, here's a free 1 day supply of firewood foraged out of the dumpster. Yeah. It's been a great way.
Do you do much hunting?
I really never have. I really had that interest. I always assumed that I would, I guess, when I was younger, particularly to get into the primitive archery, make my own bow and arrow, go out, hunt a deer. It's kind of the thing to do, I guess, is the stories I read that were inspiring. But that takes a tremendous amount of time. And I think partly just kind of being, especially in the fall, always have projects I want to do before winter. And then the fact that the deer's already laying on the side of the road, they're all the time here. So it just doesn't really make sense to pass up perfectly good meat to go spend all this time, climbing over the mountains trying to find something to drag back. So no, it's never really needed to. But I like the small carp hunting. I love doing that. And otherwise, yeah, mostly just throwing rocks and sticks at small game is the most hunting I've ever done.
So when you you're saying like a bang stick, like a kill stick, like throwing a throwing stick and
throwing
knocking
sticks,
out
yeah.
rabbits or whatever.
Yeah, or throwing rocks at squirrels, that kind of thing. So.
And wait a minute, so you can throw a rock good enough at a squirrel and knock it out that you don't need to club it, or what do you do? I'm curious on that one.
Well, this is kind of here's the one. One time we were out, hiked up in the mountains. We were camping, and our squirrels are pretty small here. We've got the red squirrels, our lodgepole pines have these super small cones, little tiny nuts in them. So the pine nuts are small, the squirrels are small. And so we got up in the mountains here near Hollowtop Lake above my house. And there's this red squirrel in the tree, and I think there was 3 of us. And so, we each picked up rock and chucked it at the squirrel. We all missed. And so squirrel went a little bit higher, but it was within reach. And so we kept throwing rocks, and it just kind of found this like perfect spot where it was visible, but we couldn't hit it. And so we each threw like 100 rocks, so 300 rocks total at one squirrel, and never got it. But all that practice, of course, it's not. We don't live this way every day, and so if you're hunting every day with rocks, you'd actually be very good at it. And anyway, the next morning I went out and I saw a squirrel on a branch, and I threw a rock, hit it, killed it first shot. And so it just takes there's a little muscle memory you got to wake up there, and then
yeah, I do not have that, so. I'd much rather use an arrow or some other projectile.
And it's similar. I mean, you gotta practice with the bow and arrow.
Yeah,
the same thing. And once you get that practice in, then you can do
it. So I'm surprised that you haven't done that. I saw the other day though that you did you have somebody out to was it the owl school or something that you did flintlocks or something?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was part of our Jefferson River Canoe Trail group. A local guy who builds the muzzle loader rifles, spends like up to 300 hours building a gun, doing it, really exceptionally nice job on it. And so it was a thrill. He came out to our school and talked to the students about building these muzzle loaders. And then we went out and each fired a round, and it was, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 degrees out. So it's very short. We didn't really have winter gear. Didn't really have winter gear for this, so it was a very short shooting session. But we each got to fire a ball, and that was fun.
Yeah, no, that's pretty neat. I always picture back to like Lewis and Clark expeditions or something like that and it'd be pretty cool to do like a dugout canoe trip and take a deer or something like that and sit there and salt cure the meat or, just something fun like that. That's how I envision it in my head. But
we actually, one year we paddled the Bighorn River in south central Montana, and we left the house here and we ended up finding a roadkill deer. I think it was just like 3 miles down the road. And, just threw a tarp over my students' laps and threw the deer on their laps. And we butchered it and then brought it out on the trip in the cooler. But we actually did, once we got out on the river, we built like a smoking rack and made the jerky and smoked it and dried it there on the trip. And it's great.
No, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about the like plant identification and stuff, if there's one thing you could tell somebody that would help them as far as families or something like that, what would it be? And I think you already mentioned it to me, but for everybody else listening.
So my book Botany in a Day goes into the plant family patterns. So if you know a pattern, like say for the mustard family, that the mustard flowers have 4 petals with 6 stamens. That's the male part of the flower. It'll be 4 tall stamens, 2 short stamens. So you just have to remember that much information. 4 petals, 6 stamens, 4 tall, 2 short. that'll identify any mustard positively. There's over 3,000 of them in the world, and they're all edible. So right there, you just learned 3,000 edible plants. And really the best way to learn these, I've got this game. So I wrote a children's book, Shanleia's Quest, a botany adventure for kids ages 9 to 99. And then later made this card game that covers the plant family patterns for the 8 families in the book. And this is actually my preferred way to teach. And I do this at the different primitive skills gatherings that I go to, work with adults. And so just playing these games, and within an hour or two, you can learn the essential identification characteristics for like 40,000 plants to their proper families. And so you can learn this plant identification, and in many cases, their uses, just knowing these basic family patterns. And to me, the family patterns are really incredible because unlike when you're dealing with instead of learning plants one at a time, where every plant you come to is new, with the family patterns, you see something new that you've never encountered before, and you recognize immediately, oh, this is related to something I know back home. And so, traveling around the world, you can find plants you've never encountered before in your life. You don't know their name, but you might know their edible or medicinal uses just because you know what they're related to.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to look at it too. And that's something I'm trying to do and definitely learn a little bit more. So it's been awesome talking to you. Interesting adventures for sure. And before we go, though, where can people find you and find all your books? Or do classes, right? So.
Yeah, very good. So the publishing company is Hops Press, HOPS Press.com. And then, so that's where the books are, and all my websites are tied together. So if you go to the school, greenuniversity.com, you'll also be able to get to my books that way. But adult programs through Green University. And one thing we do each year, we do a 2-week botany and foraging intensive. And so this coming year, we'll be going to Oregon. And so each year we explore a new place and just dive deep into plant identification, wild food foraging, and we do some like permaculture tours, sustainable living, throw a little bit of everything in there. It's a lot of fun. Come join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.
Pursuing wild game in wild places. Tune in to Hunt Stand Presents Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.
You want to succeed, you want to fish, you want to be one of the greatest.
Tune in to West Marine's Life on the Water, presented by Costa Custom Boats, every Saturday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV.